at least for myself, probably the biggest things which I connect with the Warta and let's say the whole alliance of NATO opportunity.
Howdy and ahoy! Welcome to the Allied Airpower podcast, NATO's sole broadcast that patrols the full spectrum of air, space, and cyberspace. I am your host, callsign Houdini, and this week's episode begins a special two-parter series on NATO Days in Ostrava, Czech Republic, Europe's biggest security show, attracting over 200,000 visitors a year from across the world. Planes, planes, planes galore! In this episode, we chat with two leaders intimately involved in the planning and organizing of this large exposition, retired U.S. Air Force Colonel David Webb and Czech Air Force Colonel Michal Kudyn. Colonel Webb has been closely tied to NATO Days for more than 15 years. He has nearly 3 decades of service in his career as a U.S. Air Force officer, logging more than 4,200 flight hours as a B-52 electronic warfare officer, instructor, and commander. After retiring in 2014, he moved into flight operations with FedEx and since 2022 has served as the North American representative for Jagello 2000, the organizers of NATO Days in Ostrava. He's been part of NATO Days in one way or another for more than 15 years, helping bring aircraft over like the B-52, B-1, F-35, and CV-22 to this huge event. We're also joined today by Colonel Michal Kudyn of Czech Air Force Command there in Prague. Over a career spanning more than 25 years, he has served as a pilot, instructor, and commander with nearly 1,900 flight hours in aircraft such as the L-39 Albatross and the L-159 ALCA. Colonel Kudyn has held various leadership roles in the Czech Air Force, from squadron command at Čáslav Air Base to chief of the fighter branch at Czech Air Force Command. He now serves as head of training and exercise for the Czech Air Force. He brings extensive NATO experience as well, with time at the Combined Air Operations Center in Udom and as a planner for major multinational exercises. We're really grateful to get these two very, very busy colonels on the show during this very, very busy period leading up to the event to talk to us about NATO Days in Ostrava. Now, let's learn what this NATO Days in Ostrava is all about. Today, we're going to talk about NATO Days in Ostrava, and we got two esteemed guests on the show, Colonel Michal Kudyn of the Czech Air Force and Colonel callsign World Wide Web, Colonel David Webb, U.S. Air Force retired. And we're going to kind of get into their careers, where they come from, and how they're supporting this event. But first, I have to read the disclaimer, as I always do. The views expressed on the Allied Air Power podcast are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of NATO, NATO Allied Air Command, or any national government. Any external hyperlinks or resources that we share on the podcast are not endorsement by NATO. Now that we got that legal disclaimer out of the way, let's get into NATO Days in Ostrava. So let's begin with you, Colonel Webb. Sir, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your role at NATO Days, and you got to tell us where your call sign comes from?
Oh, well, thanks for the opportunity to chat with you today and all of your listeners about NATO Days in Ostrava. It's a huge, huge event. Personally, I am a career Air Force officer, spent all of my years flying on B-52s, not a pilot by trade. I was an electronic warfare officer, but spent 30 years on the Beast while I was in the Air Force. Back in 2010, we had the opportunity to take a B-52 into Ostrava for the air show on the very first time. I was part of the lead team during that auspicious year. Ever since then, we've had opportunities to bring the bomber to the event, either on its a static display or in a flying aspect for flyovers. When I retired in 2017, I wanted to continue my relationship with Jagello 2000, which is the Czech NGO that runs NATO Days, as well as many other security aspects during the course of a given year. They offered me the chance to be the North American representative for Jagello 2000, which means I am responsible for coordinating U.S. participation as well as Canadian participation in NATO Days every year. So I hung up my blue suit, but I still put on my hat to come to work, if you will, for Yagalo every year to make sure that we have a good representation across the board for all of our Army, Air Force, Marine participation, as well as Canadians at the air show. It's been an exciting time since I retired to keep my hands still in the middle of it.
Yeah, I imagine this is a super cool job to be able to carry over, in a way, your service into this important event. Now, I have to ask again, World Wide Web, the cost side. There has to be a story there, sir.
Well, it's unfortunately in the modern age that we find, the digital age that we find ourselves in, it just kind of came naturally. Usually you get a call sign by doing something poorly or perhaps in bad taste, or you screw up something to get a call sign. In my case, luckily, it just was a natural flow. So there are times that I'll sign emails with 3 W's to let everybody know that it's me. So it just, luckily, I didn't make any faux pas to get my call sign.
That's true. There's always a story associated to it. Well, sir, thank you for being on the show. Colonel Kudyn, sir, could you tell us a little bit about your background in the Czech Air Force and your role in NATO days there in Ostrava?
Nice to hear you both. First of all, Dave, nice to meet you face to face for first time.
Thank you as well.
Very short story. We had to cooperate or exchange some emails for NATO days planning this year, but it is first time I see Dave face to face. Great again. Well, I will start from the end. I'm a display director for NATO Days 2025, which is an honor, really. Nothing secret about it, and to be real honest, it's a great pleasure to everybody, or at least to me and my team, work with Thiago and other guys, and to be in Ostrava. It is the second time for me that I was assigned as a display director, with the gap for first time it was 2022, and short gap, and now I'm back. So this is the role for the NATO days this year for me. And a little bit about my career. Well, going back to 1998, after the University of Defense, I joined the Air Force. Spent most of my career flying as an instructor pilot, L-39 Albatros, one of the most famous jet trainer. Then I spent 3 years in a NATO structure in Germany, which was great experience. Let's say something I will never ever forget. And well, then squadron commander, and now for some time in Czech Air Force Command. So that's short briefing about my military career.
Well, that's very interesting, sir. So you just mentioned you had spent some time here in Germany under NATO. Was that the old Allied Air Command back in the day, or was it a different organization?
Well, it was 12 to 15. If I remember correctly, it was exactly at the edge of, or the change of the structure, NATO command structure. So I joined NATO with old one, so it was a little bit tricky to find proper position for me due to some changes. But I was really lucky at the time, because due to those changes, I was assigned for a really nice position, and therefore I had a great chance to be taught by great people, great professionals, very experienced. That's the first point. And second one is that I had a chance to prepare exercises, to travel a bit around Europe, down to Aircom as well several times.
It sounds like you had so much experience working here at NATO, and as one NATO service member to another, you understand there's great benefit in working in this kind of environment where you have just all these ways of thinking from different cultures, different countries, and whatnot. So thank you. I didn't know you worked at NATO at some point. And I have a lot of respect for the Czech Air Force here in our building. They always say hello to me, and I like to think, and I don't think I told you this, but my wife is of Czech descent from Iowa, USA. So, and she owns her Czech heritage with pride. So there's always a special place in my heart for the Czech Republic. But anyway, let's get into NATO days, right? So, sir, let's begin with you, Colonel Kudyn. What are NATO days in Ostrava in the Czech Republic?
Well, quite a broad question. Where to start? Imagine you are a young guy, so it is a great chance to see the best fighters, best pilot around the world, to meet great, beautiful, or hopefully not offensive, ugly, ugly frames like big one B-52, because it is one of the greatest experience ever during NATO days. Well, this is from other perspective, a great chance to meet other colleagues, other friends, old friends from NATO, professionals, display pilots. So it depends on the perspective you are looking at this event, but well, always a great event.
Oh, for sure, sir. I think you hit, as we say, you hit the nail on the head when you say the B-52 is one of the greatest experiences. It is one of my favorite aircraft personally. I've flown in it, and I know what the name you're referring to, the big, ugly, flying fortress. It must be a sight to behold there on the ground. Well, let's talk about the event itself. Colonel Webb, sir, could you tell our audience what is the main goal of NATO days there in Ostrava?
Well, the main goal is, when we have air shows, it is an opportunity for us to show the taxpayers and the public what their tax dollars go for every year, how those support our military. In Europe, in the European Union, Czech Republic, obviously the country is much smaller population-wise, and the military is much smaller. This is an opportunity for us with Jagiello and NATO days to put on display for 200,000 people potentially every year to see not just Czech assets, whether it's an L-39, L-159, L-410, all of those, in addition to the Gripen that they currently fly. It's an opportunity to let the taxpayers in the Czech Republic see all of the different assets that NATO allies have, and we have other non-NATO allies that arrive every year. We've had Austria comes, they bring helicopters, they bring a variety of aircraft every year. The interesting thing is, it's not just an air show. People think of Farnborough, which is a trade show, and they think of the Paris Air Show, which is a trade show. Think of Air Tattoo in the UK. We have air and ground every year. So you will see an aircraft fly, and then you will see working dogs. You will see another aircraft fly, and then you will see the surface-to-air missiles that will set up in a defensive posture. So it goes back and forth. So it lets people not just look at airplanes, but they also have an opportunity to see tanks, they see personnel carriers, they see air defense artillery and the like. And it's really, really amazing to see all of the aspects that NATO allies bring when they come, and it's free. Unlike some other air shows in Europe, ours is and always will be absolutely free to the public every year. And that's a huge, huge benefit.
Yeah, that is a huge benefit. I mean, like you said, the public wants to see where their money is going to, and in the security of their country, of Europe. And so I imagine that's why NATO Days there in the Czech Republic is called the biggest security show in Europe, right? It's not just an air show or demonstration of aircraft. It's a display to NATO publics about their security there in Europe. Now, my next, let's go back a little bit, because to be honest, I didn't really know about NATO Days until I first got here to Europe 4 years ago. So I'll address this question to Colonel Kudyn, and then Colonel Webb, sir, if you could kind of follow up on it. What is the history of NATO days there in Ostrava. When did it begin, and why did it begin? Karl Kudyn?
If I remember correctly, and Dave, please correct me if I'm wrong. This year we have 25th NATO days, but there was a break last year. Unfortunately, we had a flood, natural disaster here in Czech Republic, and we have to cancel this event very shortly before the event itself. So it was difficult time, difficult period, not only for organizers, but especially for the part of the Czech Republic, which the Ostrava and the airport itself is located in a very difficult one. As I mentioned, 25th and 25th anniversary and 25th in a row with a small gap. So it's getting older, I would say. Therefore, it's also getting, let's say, a little bit fine-tuned. That it was at the beginning, if I remember correctly, it was one-day event. It jumped from different bases, depending on the availability of that. And at the end of the day, it ended up in Ostrava Mošnov, which is currently, it was former military base with the longest runway in the Czech Republic, military runway. And currently is civilian airport. And, I would say great location. It's also always pleasure to be in Ostrava, Mošnov, or the area, as they call it, based on the closest village. It's called Mošnov. It's really nice area, and because of the support of the airport itself and folks from Tower, always great experience. So. Part of the history, but I remember only, let's say, last 7 years when I have been involved in the NATO days duty.
And Colonel Webb, I imagine you participated in NATO days as well when you were on active duty, and now obviously in with the company, right?
It was, and it's interesting. This is the 25th anniversary of the show. It started in 2001 in Černá in Ostrava proper. We brought a bomber, like I said earlier, to the air show the first time in 2010. So this is my 15th anniversary of participation in the air show in some form or fashion. It has grown over the years from, like Michal said, one day with Poland there for a very small event to the event that it is now. This year we have 17 countries. We've had over 20 countries in years past to present aircraft and ground support equipment at the air show. I call it air show, that's the easy way to say it, but at the event over the course of the years. And so it continues to grow. Every year we actually have what's called a special partner nation that is the highlight of the event. This year it happens to be Italy. And so Italy is bringing a number of ground forces, a number of aircraft, as well as their political military folks that will be there. Each year we select a NATO member to be the special partner nation. And it's really, really nice to see how they integrate into NATO and how they bring so much equipment that is sometimes unique to their country to let everyone see. And again, Italy this year. So it'll be exciting to see. They're bringing an F-35.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. The F-35. My boss is here at NATO is Italian. So he made sure to point that out of who's the special honoree at NATO days there in Ostrava. But 17 countries. Wow. So it continues to grow every year, right? More countries want to participate in the event.
They do. And we always reach out as soon as the event is over. We begin reaching out for next year's event. We plan many years in advance, obviously, about who might be a special partner nation going forward. And then we begin beating the bushes to see who will be a willing participant and an active participant. Obviously, the Visegrad Four, Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, and Slovak Republic, are neighbors immediately around us. And so they always have a large presence of aircraft personnel. But we reach out. We've had, the RAF comes every year. The Luftwaffe comes, the Italians, we have Austrians. What do we have? Everyone across the gamut in Europe. We even have the Brazilians. They're bringing their new 390, their high-wing, multi-place cargo aircraft this year. And they brought them in years past as well. And so not just relegated to Europe and North America, we actually have a South American representative.
Wow, it's truly a global event. But of course, the prettiest planes are from the Czech Air Force, right?
Oh, well, you got to love a Gripen. Gripen is a very, very sexy jet.
Well, let's talk about, NATO days in terms of maybe the grand stage, kind of a public diplomacy platform showcasing Allied air power. Let's specifically NATO aircraft. From your perspective on the ground, how do this kind of display of the Allies all together come together and then reinforce NATO's kind of understanding to the public?
Well, it's really interesting because colloquially we don't say NATO this, NATO that. We always say the alliance. And that's kind of the heart of it. This is an alliance of countries that have come together in a collective security environment to go, we are stronger together than we are individually. So we have an opportunity to share that with the public. In the United States, NATO is a word that we say, but because we're isolated on the other side of the Atlantic, it's not always as meaningful as it is to those in Central Europe, in the Czech Republic. They have seen the Velvet Revolution, where they in the Slovak Republic decided to become two separate nations. And they have seen the upheaval throughout Europe since the war ended in 1945. And as a result, they have seen the collective alliance grow and build so that they are very comfortable with it. Cell phones are everywhere. There's an IKEA on every corner, satellite television and those things. The world is available to everyone in the Czech Republic. But there's still some portions of the country who are unaware of all that the alliance can do for the country. And it's our job, it's our great pleasure, I guess, to display the alliance to the public so that they understand that we're all in this fight together.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And Colonel Kudyn, like Colonel Webb brought up, sir, this full display of collective defense to publics across Europe, but to those who probably don't even know, what NATO stands for. What does it mean for the Czech Air Force to host this huge event that just continues to grow year in and year out?
I think I've mentioned this one a little bit at the beginning. So usually for let's say ordinary airman, in polite way, saying it means that you can meet your friends, your colleagues. So this is again a chance to speak to your friends with about last year or previous year's experience and so on. So it is one of the possibility. Then again, you can arrange, and it's my experience from previous director of display responsibility in 2022. I had a chance to speak to some German colleagues about some possibilities, and without knowing it at the time, it was the beginning of great cooperation with air-to-air refueling possibility and so on. So, it is for, let's say, for public, this one is hidden, but I would assure everybody that for us it's not, let's say, show to show, let's say, the best side of us, but it is part of our job. We try to exploit every possibility to cooperate, to speak to our allies, to start other businesses, and so on, so on. So, and even more, let's say, since I'm normally stuck in the Central Europe, so it's quite normal to cooperate with Germans, with Polish colleagues, Slovaks, or even friends from Austria. But it's not that normal to speak to, let's say, Spanish guys, etc., etc. So it's really great opportunity, and well, sometimes these events are also connected with some business, some contributions from RQ to public service. So what I hear currently, so there will be some school visits and so on, which is great. And I have to thank to all RQ and participants that they are willing to bring that job to the public community.
Right. And I can see how NATO Days can be just a great opportunity, great forum to exchange ideas across the alliance. That is one of my favorite things at NATO. You know, the Finns are my favorite people to hang out with, or play pool with, or drink a beer with. You know, but just seeing your colleagues from across the alliance, from any country, from every background, way of thinking, it is such a great experience to be able to just drink a beer with an ally from a whole different place of the world. I guess I'll ask this question respectfully to each one of you, and I'll admit it's a cheesy question, but I think it's fitting to what NATO Days is about, right? And the question is, what does NATO mean for each one of you individually, right? Colonel Webb, I'll give you the first hit on that question.
Well, and like I said earlier, it's the alliance. It's an opportunity to work shoulder to shoulder with nations that have the same mindset and the same understanding of a collective defense. That Warsaw Pact is long gone, and the NATO those are the two foils from one another once upon a time during the Cold War. But we are NATO. NATO is us, all of us. And it's an opportunity to, if you pick on my friends, you're picking on me. And that's, I mean, Article 5 is what the world thinks about if you find yourself in a dire strait, then you don't have to worry about someone coming to your collective defense. And I just see it as an opportunity to work with partner nations across the alliance to further the protective and the defense interests of all of the NATO members.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And Colonel Kudyn, what does NATO stand for you over there in the Czech Republic?
Difficult to follow, Dave, because it's mentioned everything. Well, I wanted to use only few words, and I will use it, but I will repeat, Dave. Security assurance, and especially for me, an opportunity. The opportunities is, at least for myself, probably the biggest things which I connect with the world and let's say the whole alliance of NATO opportunity.
Well said, sir. You know who else thumbs up everything in a few words? My Czech wife. So I respect that, sir. Thank you for keeping it succinct and straight to the point. That's why the Czech Republic is one of my favorite countries and the best beer in the world. My German listeners disagree. By all means, come on the podcast. All right, gentlemen, let's wrap this up. I want to be mindful of your time. Thank you, sirs, for being on the Allied Airpower podcast. My last question, and it really is for Colonel Webb, sir. How do you see NATO Days evolving over the next 5 or 10 years into the future?
Well, it continues to grow. 2001 to 2025, the growth has been exponential with regards to participants in the air show itself. But what we haven't talked about is community engagement opportunities outside of the air show air proper. on the days before that, in years past when we've had Allied aircraft, we've had a bomber on the ground, we've had a B-1 on the ground in the times past, we've had C-17s, C-5s. This year in Nebraska, Air National Guard is bringing the KC-135. We have an opportunity to bring school children to the ramp and let them tour the aircraft without 200,000 people around them. It's an opportunity for them to see the aircraft in a very close up and talk with the crews there. But we also have an opportunity every year that we take crews to local schools, whether it's elementary schools, there's an international school in Ostrava, as well as the gymnasium, the high schools there, to allow students to talk with crew members from not just the United States, but from other countries as well, to ask them questions in an informal environment about, tell us what you do for a living, tell us about what you do, what are you doing here at the air show, some give and take with those students. And this year, for the first time after a short pause, on Friday afternoon before the air show, we actually have an opportunity to, we say, meet the pilots. It's really meet the crews at a local bookstore in Ostrava, where we have a question and answer forum. It's moderated by a speaker who speaks English and Czech, because Czech is a challenging language to speak. I've been studying it for 2 years, and I don't think I'm any better than I was the day I started. But we've had U.S. air crews, we've had German air crews. We actually had a German chem warfare defense team come speak. They say what they do, and we have an audience that we take questions from. They ask very interesting and sometimes very challenging questions for the panel members, but it's an opportunity to see them in a different environment than at an air show with 200,000 people there. So going forward, I see those community engagement opportunities to expand before the air show, the week prior to the air show, and potentially after the air show as well, so that we continue to grow all aspects of it. It's not just an air and ground show and security show. It is an opportunity to speak one-on-one with the local public, with the taxpayers, to explain to them what it is that NATO does for them.
Thank you for bringing that up, sir. I think that's so important. I mean, that's truly how you gain hearts and minds one-on-one.
Yes.
And actually, one of our guests here on the Allied Air Power podcast is going to be out there at NATO Days from the U.S. Air Force, who actually is going to be engaging in the local community as well. And we're going to be telling his story in a future episode here on the podcast. So thank you so much for bringing that up, that important point of this whole event, and for giving me a little bit of promotional material for one of our future episodes. Colonel Kudyn, sir, same question to you. For the Czech Air Force, how do you see NATO Days evolving over the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years?
Yeah. Believe or not, it is probably the most complicated question during this podcast, because currently I am really focused on these NATO days due to my duty. So I am deeply dived in the whole schedule and all that stuff. And it's very difficult to me to imagine how to continue. First of all, what is necessary to say is that the level of the quality and everything around NATO days is very high. So I would say the first point should be to maintain at least this kind of level. Well, this event is really huge one, so any effort to make it even better, as was mentioned by Dave, is very, very difficult. You probably can't imagine that, but it's really difficult, because all those tiny things are very time and effort complicated, and it's not really easy. But I think again they've covered all of that stuff, maybe to make it a little bit bigger before and after that. We can see some events before NATO days. So there is a big conference plan right before NATO days called a Future Air Force Forum Conference. Hopefully I said that correctly. Future Air forum conference is a correct name for it. And this one connects all that expertise and subject matter experts covering training and everything around the aeronautical business and industry and so on. So it is maybe one of the way. But I think the most important is that this event is always about to be kind of air show, to present what we know we can do, what our capabilities are to our citizens. But it should at least, again, I would put my approach as a display director to be safe and entertainment for everybody to enjoy this event throughout the whole weekend. And it is really, again, I feel like it is really difficult to maintain the level of it. So at least this one.
Yes, sir. I can imagine. This is not an easy event to organize, but I'm sure it's so fruitful at the end when you see the fruit of your labors and all the crowds there. And thank you both, gentlemen, for contributing to and leading NATO Days there in Ostrava. Last question, and I'll address it to first to Colonel Kudyn and then Colonel Webb, sir. Our primary audience here on the Allied Air Power podcast are NATO service members, national air forces across 32 different countries, 28 different languages. What do you want to tell them directly, whether about NATO or NATO Days? Colonel Kudyn, I'll give it to you first.
My role should be to invite everybody, so I will do it. So please come to Ostrava. But to be honest, it's maybe too late to book any hotel, because for Czech and even our neighboring countries, so popular this event that every single bed within maybe 100-kilometer radius is already sold. So it's really difficult. But if you have a chance, please come and see. We would like to see you there. And again, I have to go back because my experience with NATO, with my NATO colleagues, with our NATO organization, and so is so great, so huge. So be proud of it and stay with NATO.
Thank you, sir. Well, people can sleep in their cars, so make the trip out there if necessary. Colonel Webb, sir, what would you like to tell NATO service members?
As Michal said, come to the air show. You will be amazed at all that you see. Not just the ground support, the air, but the food. The food is to die for. Cannot beat that. But most importantly, I just want to say thank you to every service member who stands shoulder to shoulder with us in the Alliance. If it wasn't for each one of you, we would not be as strong as we are. We're 28, now we're 32. It continues to grow, and that's a wonderful thing to see.
Well, thank you, sirs. Colonel Kudyn, Colonel Webb, thank you so much for your time. Folks, you heard it. NATO Days in Ostrava, September 20th to 21st. Be there or be square. No, that was too cheesy. I might have to cut that one out. But just be there. Thank you, gentlemen, both for your time. And
thanks so much.
Yeah. Pleasure to be here.
And that wraps up this flight of the Allied Air Power podcast, where news-driven updates meet the authentic voices behind the mission to defend every inch of NATO territory. Today, we had two distinguished colonels on the show, one Czech, another American, both committed to a single objective: the successful execution of NATO Days in Ostrava, Czech Republic, the biggest security show in Europe. We thank the colonels for their time in breaking down what NATO Days in Ostrava is all about, and it seems appropriate that the motto of the event is, quote-unquote, our security cannot be taken for granted, and there's no prosperity without security. We hope to see you there in Czechia for NATO Days in Ostrava, September 20th to 21st, and stay tuned for next week's episode for our two-parter series on NATO Days, where we follow the journey of an airman from Czech citizen to U.S. Air Force Master Sergeant. Now, if you found value in today's episode, share the show and leave a rating so others can navigate air, space, and cyberspace with us. Explore deeper coverage anytime on our website at ac.nato.int and send us your questions or topics you'd like us to tackle. Until our next sortie, stand ready in the air, secure in cyberspace, and steady on the path to the stars.